Welcome back. Before we go into exploring the data dictionary, let's just mention one important thing. All of the tables that make up the data dictionary are owned by the sys user, and that user has all of the privileges to change them. However, it is not advised to update or delete some data from the data dictionary tables, as this could potentially cause the database not to function properly. So, now that we have that in mind, let's go explore the data dictionary. And a good starting point is the dictionary view. So we have a query, select all from dictionary, and this is gonna list all of the data dictionary views that we can use to check other data dictionary views, right? So for example, one of those is the user tables view, and we can check what kind of a data it consists of. So if we select all from user tables, we're gonna get additional information about the tables that the current user owns. As we are connected with the HR user, we can see additional information about the table's countries, jobs, job history, regions, locations, and so on. And of course, the other ones that we created while being connected as HR user. So all of the tables are gonna be present and described over here if you have not dropped them after going through each of the lessons prior of this. If we check back the dictionary view, you may notice that all of the results have a prefix. For example, we have all, and we have user, and so on. By the following table, which will be also present in the lesson resources, we show how the prefixes describe the meaning of a particular view. So if a view has a prefix of user, it defines the objects that are owned by the current user, which is connected to the database. If we query from some view that has all prefix, we are getting data from a view that describes objects which are owned by any user, but that the current user has a privilege to fetch from. And the most powerful one is the DBA, or the database administrator, which lists all of the objects in the database. Another one prefix that we're gonna cover is the dynamic performance view. About those, we're gonna talk in the following lesson. And there are, of course, a couple of more prefixes which are not covered by this course or the certification exam, but can be useful, and I encourage you to scroll through them, such as DBMS, role, NLS, and so on. So, with having that in mind, when we query from the user tables view, we're gonna get only the information about the tables that are owned by current user, which is at the moment HR. If we switch that prefix to all, we're gonna get all of the tables that current user has some privileges to. And we're gonna get an extensive list of all of those tables, right? For the exam, but also on the job, it is important to know a couple of those views. So we can find some data about objects that we created or that the user owns. So for example, a user catalog, it defines all of the tables, sequences, synonyms, and so on, owned by the current user. Another one is the user constraints. And again, just to recall, we could also change that to all or to DBA to fetch other data, but we are fetching now the data for the current user. And the user constraints returns, as the name suggests, constraints that have been created by that user. So for example, primary keys, foreign keys, the not null constraints, and so on, right? One that we already checked in previous lessons is the user indexes. So this shows us the indexes that we created. Or, for example, we can check those indexes by each particular column. So we can check a particular index, on which table it is, the column name, and a lot of more data about particular index. If we want to check all of the objects owned by the user, we get that from the user objects data dictionary view. So as you can see from the results, we can check the tables, indexes, sequences, and so on. And same as with the tables and indexes, we can check the sequences that we created, synonyms, and so on. There are a couple of more data dictionary views that you need to be at least familiar with. And all of those are going to be present in the lesson resources. So I encourage you to check that and query from each of those that is in the resource. And also by yourself, from all those data dictionary views, check the columns as Many of those contain interesting data about the actual database objects. This is it for this one, and see you in the next one.